Navy SEAL Commander Jake Lawson was accustomed to the rigors of his training routines, the early mornings, the biting cold, the relentless physical demands. But on this particular day, as he jogged along the winding dirt path near the outskirts of Millbrook, Ohio, something felt off. The small town was known for its quiet streets, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, and the biggest excitement was the annual county fair. It was the kind of town that seemed untouched by the chaos of the world beyond its borders. Jake's breath came steady, his strides measured as he pushed forward past the clusters of oak trees shedding their golden autumn leaves. The sun filtered through the canopy in lazy beams, illuminating patches of the forest floor where squirrels darted and birds sang their unhurried songs. Yet beneath this peaceful veneer, a faint sound tugged at Jake's attention. A low, desperate cry, barely audible over the rustling leaves and his own footsteps. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. Slowing to a cautious walk, he scanned the underbrush, his trained eyes narrowing. The cries repeated, more urgent this time, a fragile thread of sound that seemed out of place amidst the tranquility. Jake's pulse quickened, curiosity mingling with concern. He veered off the path, pushing through thick brush and tangled vines toward the source. After several minutes of careful exploration, he stumbled upon an old, weathered property just beyond a bend in the trail. The house was shrouded in shadows, its windows dark and lifeless, the paint peeling from years of neglect. A chain-link fence, rusted and sagging, enclosed the yard, and weeds strangled the flower beds that once might have bloomed here. The air hung heavy with a mix of damp earth and decay. Jake's gaze was drawn to a peculiar sight near the back of the house. A patch of disturbed ground, as if someone had recently been digging. Kneeling down, he noticed a loose wooden plank, partially concealed beneath dry leaves. His hands moved with practiced precision, prying it free to reveal a narrow set of stairs leading downward, swallowed by darkness. The faint cries grew louder, echoing up the stairwell like whispers from a forgotten past. Without hesitation, Jake retrieved his flashlight from his belt and descended into the cold, musty basement below. The air was thick with the scent of mold and something metallic, a faint trace of blood perhaps. His boots clattered softly against the cracked concrete as he scanned the space. And then he saw her. A young woman, her clothes torn and soiled, was chained to a rusted pipe along the far wall. Her wide eyes reflected a mixture of terror and relief as they met his. She was pale, gaunt from neglect, and trembling uncontrollably. Her hair hung in tangled strands, framing a face marked by bruises and exhaustion. Despite the fear that gripped her, there was a flicker of hope igniting as she realized she was not alone. Jake's military instincts surged forward. He spoke softly, trying to bridge the silence. "Hey, I'm here to help. You're safe now." The woman's lips quivered, but no words came. Instead, she clutched the chains that bound her wrists, her fingers trembling as if testing their strength. Jake's mind raced, calculating how to free her quickly without alerting whoever had imprisoned her. He scanned the basement once more. Old tools, broken furniture, and the faint outline of fresh scratches on the concrete floor. His fingers found a set of bolt cutters tucked into his pack, a routine carry given his line of work. Kneeling beside her, he worked swiftly, the metallic jaws snapping open with a satisfying crunch. As the chains fell away, the woman collapsed into his arms, her body racked with sobs that shook the very air around them. Jake held her firmly, a steady anchor in the storm of her pain. Outside, the world seemed to hold its breath. The distant sound of children playing in the town square, the hum of passing cars, all contrasted sharply with the grim reality in the basement. Jake knew this was just the beginning. He helped her to her feet and guided her up the stairs, each step heavy with the weight of what they had uncovered. As sunlight spilled into the basement entrance, the woman's features became clearer, her eyes searching his face, pleading silently for safety and reassurance. Jake's gaze hardened with resolve. This was no accident, no random act of cruelty. Someone had deliberately hidden her away, and it was his duty to find out why. Once outside, Jake wrapped his jacket around her shoulders, shielding her from the crisp autumn air. The woman leaned on him as they made their way back toward the town, her steps faltering but determined. Jake's mind churned with questions. Who was she? How long had she been held captive? And perhaps most pressing, who else might be trapped in the shadows of this quiet town? As they approached the edge of Millbrook, the familiar sights of the town square came into view. The quaint shops, the old brick buildings, and the steady flow of townsfolk going about their day painted a stark contrast to the nightmare they had just escaped. Jake's presence with the woman drew curious glances. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd like a slow-moving storm. He guided her toward the local hospital, a modest brick building with a faded sign swinging gently in the breeze. Inside, nurses and doctors moved with practiced efficiency, their faces registering surprise and concern at the sight of the distressed woman. Jake remained by her side, offering quiet reassurance as medical staff began their assessment. The woman remained silent, her trauma etched deep within her eyes. She did not speak, did not explain. Instead, she clung to Jake's steady presence, a silent testament to the horrors she had endured. The room filled with the soft beeping of monitors and the rustle of medical gowns. But Jake's focus was unwavering. There was a story here, a truth waiting to be uncovered, and he was determined to see it through. Outside the hospital windows, Millbrook carried on in blissful ignorance. Children laughed on the playground, shopkeepers arranged their displays, and the autumn wind whispered secrets through the trees. But beneath this calm surface lay a darkness that Jake Lawson was now committed to exposing. The quiet town was no longer just a peaceful backdrop. It had become the stage for a battle against unseen evil. With the woman safe for the moment, Jake allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. His military training had prepared him for many challenges, but nothing quite like this. A rescue born of chance, a mystery wrapped in fear, and the first step toward unraveling a sinister truth hidden in the heart of Millbrook. The sterile fluorescent lights of Millbrook General Hospital flickered faintly above, casting a pale glow over the emergency room, where Jake Lawson stood resolute, his military posture unwavering even as a storm of emotions swirled around him. The woman he had found chained in the basement was now lying on a narrow hospital bed, her frail frame trembling beneath a thin blanket, wounds being tended with clinical precision. The antiseptic scent mingled with the faint hum of monitors and the distant clatter of footsteps through the halls, creating a surreal contrast to the grim reality they faced. Jake remained at her side, a silent sentinel, as nurses moved efficiently, checking vital signs and administering fluids. The woman's dark eyes flickered open briefly, flickers of fear and confusion passing through them before she closed them again, retreating into silence. She spoke no words, no explanation, and that silence gnawed at Jake's conscience. He reached out tentatively, brushing a stray lock of hair from her pale forehead, offering a quiet reassurance that was met only with a faint, barely perceptible nod. The hospital room was a fortress of calm, amidst the chaos that had begun to ripple through the town. Outside, news of the discovery was spreading, whispers transforming into murmurs, and murmurs into uneasy conversations. Millbrook, with its idyllic streets and friendly faces, was suddenly a place holding secrets darker than anyone could have imagined. As Jake contemplated the next steps, the door creaked open, and Sheriff Linda Marks stepped inside, her presence commanding and sharp-eyed. She was a woman forged by years of small-town law enforcement, her demeanor a mix of skepticism and pragmatism. Her deep brown eyes scanned the room quickly, taking in the fragile woman on the bed, then locking onto Jake with a guarded expression. "Commander Lawson," she said, her tone measured but tinged with doubt. "I hear you found her. Care to explain?" Jake met her gaze evenly. "I was out for a run near the old Miller property. Heard someone crying. Found her chained in the basement. Brought her here." Linda's lips pressed into a thin line. "Why didn't you report it immediately? Why bring her here yourself?" Jake's jaw tightened. Time was critical. She needed help fast. "I'm trained in emergency response. I did what I thought was best." Linda's eyes flickered to the woman again, then back to Jake. "And what about identification? Do we know who she is?" Jake shook his head. "Not yet. She hasn't spoken. Trauma like this, it takes time." The sheriff's skepticism was palpable, but beneath it lay the burden of responsibility. She was the town's protector, and sudden disruptions like this demanded careful handling. "We'll need to secure the scene, start an official investigation. This could draw media attention. We need to be prepared." Jake nodded, understanding the delicate balance Linda had to maintain. "I'm willing to assist in any way I can. This isn't just a rescue. It's part of something bigger." Linda's gaze softened slightly, acknowledging his resolve. "All right, but we do this by the book. No heroics." As the two stood in uneasy alliance, the woman stirred again, her eyes fluttering open to reveal a haunting vulnerability. Jake leaned closer, speaking softly. "You're safe here. We're going to help you." She responded with a whispered shake of her head, eyes wide but silent. The weight of whatever nightmare she had endured pressed down, rendering her speechless. Jake felt the depth of her trauma, a silent scream echoing loud enough to fill the room. Outside the hospital, the town grappled with a tremor of disbelief. Millbrook's residents, once confident in their security, now whispered anxiously about the darkness that had crept beneath their feet. The local diner buzzed with hushed conversations. The hardware store clerk exchanged worried glances, and children's laughter was tinged with a newfound wariness. Back in the emergency room, Jake found himself caught between two worlds: the clinical, controlled environment of the hospital and the chaotic, emotional undercurrent flowing from the woman's presence. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small notebook, jotting down observations, silent, fearful, possibly abducted, no identification, physical trauma consistent with prolonged captivity. His military training pushed him to strategize, to anticipate threats. But here, in this fragile moment, his focus was on healing, both physical and psychological. He glanced at the medical team working diligently, grateful for their expertise. The hospital was a sanctuary, but outside its walls, the battle was just beginning. The door opened again, and a nurse entered, carrying a tray with food and water. She approached the woman gently, offering a glass of water. The woman's lips parted, but no words followed. The nurse exchanged a glance with Jake, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Trauma could silence, but it could also heal, with patience. Jake's thoughts drifted to the town's law enforcement and the inevitable investigation that awaited. Sheriff Marks was right. This was no ordinary case. The woman's captivity suggested a sinister undercurrent beneath Millbrook's peaceful facade. He resolved to stay involved, to lend his tactical expertise to uncover the truth. As the hours passed, the woman remained largely silent, her eyes tracing the ceiling, body tense and withdrawn. Jake sat beside her, offering quiet companionship, a steady presence in a world turned upside down. He knew that trust would not come easily, that recovery was a journey fraught with pain and fear. Outside, a small group of townspeople gathered near the hospital entrance, their faces etched with concern. Rumors swirled. Who was the woman? How long had she been held captive? Was the danger still near? The questions rippled through the community like a slow, spreading wave. Sheriff Marks stepped outside to address the crowd, her voice firm but cautious. "We ask for patience and trust as we investigate. Our priority is the safety of everyone in Millbrook." Her words offered a measure of reassurance, but beneath the surface, unease lingered. The town's sense of security had been shattered, replaced by uncertainty and fear. Back in the emergency room, Jake's phone buzzed with a message from his SEAL team, a reminder of the world he had left behind, yet also a lifeline. He replied briefly, committing to remain until the woman was safe and the investigation advanced. When the hospital doctor returned, briefing Jake and Linda on the woman's condition, the gravity of her injuries became clear. Physical wounds were being treated, but the psychological scars remained raw and uncharted. "We'll need to monitor her closely," the doctor said. "Trauma like this can manifest in many ways: memory loss, withdrawal, even physical symptoms without obvious causes." Linda nodded, her expression grim but resolute. "We'll do everything we can to help her, and we'll find out who did this." Jake felt a surge of determination. This woman's silence was a barrier, but not an impenetrable one. With patience, skill, and compassion, they would unravel her story and bring justice to those responsible. As the night deepened, Jake remained vigilant. The hospital's quiet corridors, a temporary refuge from the storm gathering beyond. The woman's plight had become his mission, a call that transcended duty and tapped into something profoundly human. In the stillness, the fragile hope flickered, an ember waiting to ignite. Sheriff Linda Marks sat at her cluttered desk, the afternoon light filtering through the dusty blinds, casting long shadows across the room. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a palpable shift from the usual quiet routine of Millbrook's law enforcement office. Files were scattered across the surface. Incident reports, witness statements, and photographs taken from the old Miller property. Each page told a fragment of a story that was far darker than the town's peaceful reputation suggested. Across from her, Jake Lawson leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly as he reviewed the evidence they'd gathered so far. His sharp eyes, honed by years of Navy SEAL missions, scanned the details with methodical precision. He was no stranger to chaos, but this was different. A tangled web woven beneath the surface of a small town that prided itself on community and trust. "We need to widen the search," Jake said, breaking the heavy silence. "The basement was just a starting point. Whoever did this isn't working alone. There's more out there." Linda nodded slowly, her expression conflicted. "I agree. But this town isn't ready for the kind of disruption an investigation like this will bring. People are scared already, and rumors are spreading fast." Jake's gaze sharpened. "We can't let fear paralyze us. If there are others being held captive, every minute counts." Linda's fingers drummed on the desk, her mind racing through the implications. "We've started canvassing the neighborhood near the Miller property, but so far nothing concrete. No witnesses willing to come forward, and the locals are tight-lipped. There's a reason for that, Jake said quietly. Fear runs deep. People protect their own, even when it costs lives. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Detective Sarah Collins entered, a folder in hand, her face drawn but determined. "Sheriff, Jake, we found something." Linda gestured for her to continue. Sarah laid the folder on the desk and opened it, revealing photographs and notes taken from the basement after the initial search. Among the clutter, there were scraps of fabric, faint blood stains, and a hastily scrawled message on a torn piece of paper. "Multiple victims," Sarah said grimly. "We found evidence suggesting the basement wasn't just a holding cell for one person. There are signs someone else was kept down there or nearby." Jake's jaw tightened. "This is bigger than we thought. It's a network." Linda's eyes narrowed, the weight of betrayal settling over her. "And it's been operating right under our noses." The three exchanged a look, the unspoken understanding that the investigation was no longer just a local matter, but a battle against something deeply entrenched. The following days were a blur of activity. Jake offered his tactical expertise to the small team of deputies, helping to map out search patterns and coordinate surveillance. His military background proved invaluable, bringing a level of organization and discipline that the department desperately needed. Linda, meanwhile, balanced the growing pressure from the community with the demands of the case. She held town meetings, trying to quell the rising panic. But the fear was infectious. Parents kept their children close, businesses shuttered early, and whispers of danger lurked in every conversation. Despite their differing approaches, Jake's direct strategic mindset clashing at times with Linda's cautious, methodical style, the two began to forge a tentative respect. Their shared commitment to protecting Millbrook created a bond, each recognizing the other's strengths and limitations. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rolling hills, Jake and Linda reviewed new leads in the sheriff's office. A local resident had come forward anonymously, claiming to have seen strange activity near an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Jake's eyes lit with resolve. "We need to check it out." Linda hesitated. "It could be a dead end, but we can't ignore any possibility." They assembled a small team, including Detective Collins and a couple of trusted deputies, and drove out to the warehouse under cover of twilight. The building loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette against the fading light, its broken windows and rusted doors whispering secrets of neglect and decay. Jake led the approach, his movements precise and calculated. The air was thick with anticipation, every sound amplified in the stillness. As they entered, the scent of damp wood and mildew filled their nostrils. The floors creaked beneath their boots, shadows dancing along the walls. In a back room, Jake's flashlight caught the glint of metal, a set of handcuffs, discarded and tarnished. Nearby, faint footprints led toward a hidden trapdoor, partially concealed beneath a threadbare rug. Linda's breath caught. "This is it." They pried open the trapdoor, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. The team exchanged tense glances before descending, their flashlights piercing the blackness below. The tunnel was claustrophobic, the walls slick with moisture. Their footsteps echoed ominously as they navigated the labyrinthine passages, each turn revealing signs of recent use. Discarded food wrappers, makeshift bedding, scrawled markings on the walls. Suddenly, a muffled noise echoed from deeper within the tunnels. A cry, faint but unmistakable. Jake motioned for silence, signaling the team to move cautiously toward the sound. As they advanced, the passage opened into a small chamber where a young woman sat huddled, her eyes wide with terror. "Help," she whispered, voice barely audible. Jake stepped forward, kneeling beside her. "You're safe now. We're here to get you out." The woman's relief was palpable, but so was her fear. She clung to Jake's arm, trembling as memories of captivity haunted her gaze. Back above ground, as the rescued woman was escorted to safety, Jake and Linda exchanged a look, weighted with the knowledge that this was merely the first of many. The investigation intensified. The clues from the tunnels suggested a sprawling operation, one that had managed to evade detection through fear and silence. The town's fragile peace was shattered, replaced by a collective anxiety that rippled through every street and home. Jake and Linda found themselves at the center of a growing storm, balancing the urgency of the search with the complexities of community trust. They argued over tactics and priorities, but their shared goal remained unshaken: to uncover the truth and bring the perpetrators to justice. As night fell over Millbrook, the shadows deepened both above and below ground. The tunnels whispered secrets, and the town braced itself for the revelations yet to come. The sterile hospital room was heavy with unspoken tension as the woman Jake Lawson had rescued finally found the strength to break her silence. Her voice was fragile, barely above a whisper, but the words she spoke shattered the fragile calm that had settled over Millbrook. Each fragment of her harrowing ordeal peeled back layers of a nightmare that stretched far beyond the basement where she had been held captive. Jake sat beside her, his military training tempered by empathy as he listened intently. The woman's eyes, once clouded with fear, flickered with a flicker of courage, small but undeniable. She spoke of darkness, of chains and cold floors, of voices that promised escape but delivered only pain. Her story was disjointed, marked by pauses and trembling, but the fragments painted a chilling picture of captivity and cruelty. Across the room, Sheriff Linda Marks watched closely, her arms crossed, her face a mask of concern and determination. The woman's words confirmed what the evidence had suggested. This was not an isolated incident. It was part of a larger, more sinister network operating beneath the town's surface. With renewed urgency, Jake and Linda pooled their resources, diving deeper into the investigation. Maps, blueprints, and satellite imagery were spread across the sheriff's office table, outlining the town's underground infrastructure. The tunnels beneath Millbrook, once thought to be forgotten relics of the past, revealed themselves as a labyrinthine network, dark veins connecting various parts of the town. Jake traced a finger along the lines, his expression grim. These tunnels could have been used for years. Hidden entrances, escape routes, places to hide victims or move them without detection. Linda nodded, the weight of betrayal pressing down on her. And someone in this town knows about them. Someone with power. Their suspicions found chilling confirmation when an informant came forward. A jittery man who worked as a handyman for a local business. His eyes darted nervously as he recounted overhearing late-night conversations, whispers of shipments and payments, and the mention of a respected figure in Millbrook's business community. "We can't ignore this," Linda said, her voice low but firm. "If a businessman is involved, it explains the silence, the fear. People protect him because of what he controls." Jake's jaw clenched. "We're dealing with more than just criminals. This is corruption, betrayal at the highest level." The next days blurred into a whirlwind of surveillance and discreet inquiries. Jake and Linda worked side by side, their earlier tensions giving way to a shared resolve. Linda wrestled with the implications. How could someone she had seen at town meetings, someone who donated to local charities, be at the center of this darkness? One evening, as dusk settled over Millbrook, Jake and Linda met in the sheriff's office to review the latest intelligence. The air was thick with anticipation and unease. "We've confirmed unusual activity at the warehouse district," Jake reported. Late-night deliveries, unmarked vehicles. Linda tapped a pen against her notebook. And the businessman's name keeps coming up. We need to be careful. If he has that much influence, he'll have eyes everywhere. Jake nodded. We'll need a plan that doesn't tip him off. We can't afford to lose this chance. Their strategy coalesced into a covert operation aimed at catching the culprits in the act. They enlisted the help of trusted deputies and called in a federal liaison who specialized in organized crime. The stakes were high, but the team was determined. As preparations unfolded, Linda confided in Jake about her personal struggles. This town is my home. To think someone I respected could be behind this, it shakes me. Jake's voice was steady. We all have a role to play. You're the heart of this community. We'll make sure justice is done. Meanwhile, the rescued woman's condition improved slowly but steadily. Therapy sessions began, and she started to piece together more of her memories, providing crucial details about the operation's inner workings. Her testimony painted a grim portrait of coercion, intimidation, and cruelty that had gone unchecked for too long. One afternoon, while reviewing her statements, Jake and Linda uncovered a critical clue: a hidden entrance to the tunnels beneath the businessman's warehouse. It was a breakthrough that promised to expose the full scope of the network. The revelation brought a mix of hope and apprehension. The town's dark secrets were on the verge of being laid bare, but the danger was escalating. As night enveloped Millbrook, Jake stood outside the warehouse, the cool air filled with the distant sounds of crickets and the faint hum of activity inside. Beside him, Linda checked her gear, her face steeled with resolve. This is it, Jake said quietly. We take them down tonight. Linda's eyes met his, a silent vow passing between them. The battle to reclaim their town was about to begin. The deserted warehouse sat at the edge of Millbrook like a sleeping beast, its cracked windows and rusted metal walls blending into the shadows of the encroaching night. Inside, the air was thick with dust and stale secrets as Jake Lawson and Sheriff Linda Marks prepared their covert operation. The warehouse, once a bustling hub of local commerce, had become the nerve center of a criminal network that preyed on the innocent, hidden beneath the town's unsuspecting streets. Jake crouched beside a weathered crate, unfolding a detailed map of the underground tunnels they had painstakingly charted. The dim glow of a tactical flashlight illuminated the lines and markings, revealing entry points, chokeholds, and escape routes. His fingers traced a path leading directly beneath the warehouse floor, a concealed entrance they had discovered through careful investigation and whispered confessions. Linda stood nearby, her face set with determination. She had shared with Jake the personal stakes she carried, the fear, the betrayal of a community she loved, and the responsibility to bring justice to those who had suffered. Her voice was steady as she spoke. This operation isn't just about catching criminals. It's about healing this town. Jake nodded, appreciating the weight behind her words. Agreed. We move at night, under cover. Speed and precision are everything. We can't afford mistakes. The team gathered quietly, a tight-knit group of deputies and trusted allies, each aware of the risks. Among them was Deputy Mark Harris, a young officer whose steady hands and sharp eyes had earned Jake's respect, and Detective Sarah Collins, whose investigative instincts had uncovered vital clues leading to this moment. As the final preparations were made, a chilling realization settled over the group. There was a mole within their ranks, an insider leaking information to the criminals. The betrayal cut deep, adding a layer of complexity and danger to the mission. We have to be careful, Linda warned. Trust no one outside this room. Jake scanned the team, his gaze lingering on each member, searching for signs of doubt or deception. They all met his eyes with unwavering resolve, but the shadow of betrayal lingered like a silent threat. With radios set to secure channels and gear checked meticulously, the team moved out. The night air was cool and heavy, the warehouse looming larger as they approached. Jake led the way, his movements fluid and precise, a blend of military discipline and tactical awareness. Inside, the warehouse was a labyrinth of crates, machinery, and forgotten remnants of a bygone era. The group navigated through the maze of obstacles, their footsteps muffled against the concrete floor. Jake paused near the marked entrance to the tunnels, signaling the team to halt. Linda knelt beside him, her breath steady despite the tension. This is it. Together, they lifted the hidden grate, revealing the dark passageway below. The stale air rose from the depths, carrying with it the weight of years of secrets and suffering. The descent was slow and deliberate. The narrow tunnels pressed in from all sides, the walls slick with moisture and the faint scent of decay. Flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing makeshift signs and worn footprints, evidence of recent activity. Jake's voice was low but commanding. "Stay alert. We don't know what traps they've set." Suddenly, a faint metallic click echoed from ahead. An alarm triggered. Instinct took over as the team moved swiftly, weapons drawn, senses heightened. Shadows shifted, and the sound of footsteps grew louder, signaling the approach of the enemy. Linda's voice crackled through the radio. "Positions! Prepare for engagement!" The claustrophobic tunnels erupted into chaos as gunfire rang out, the sharp reports bouncing off the narrow walls. Jake led his team with practiced precision, coordinating movements and covering angles. The criminals, caught off guard but desperate, fought fiercely to maintain control. Amid the turmoil, Jake spotted a figure darting toward a concealed chamber. He pursued, heart pounding, and found the respected local businessman, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "So you finally found me," the man sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can stop what's already in motion?" Jake's eyes hardened. "Your crimes end tonight." The businessman lunged, but Jake was ready. A swift maneuver incapacitated him, and handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. The tide of the battle shifted as deputies secured the remaining assailants, freeing those hidden within the tunnels. Linda moved through the chaos, her focus on the victims, fragile souls emerging from darkness into the uncertain light of freedom. Tears streamed down faces etched with pain, but also relief. Outside, the first light of dawn began to creep over Millbrook, casting a pale glow on the battered warehouse and the weary faces gathered there. The operation was a success, but the scars left behind were deep. As the arrested were loaded into waiting vehicles, Jake and Linda exchanged a glance, a mixture of exhaustion, triumph, and resolve. The battle had been won, but the war for healing and justice was just beginning. Back at the sheriff's office, Linda confided in Jake, her voice soft but determined. "We've taken down the head, but the network runs deeper. We'll need to stay vigilant." Jake nodded, his thoughts already turning to the next steps. "Agreed. But for now, we've saved lives. That's what matters." The warehouse stood silent once more, a grim monument to the darkness that had lurked beneath Millbrook. Yet, amid the shadows, a flicker of hope burned brighter. A promise that the town would reclaim its peace, one step at a time. Under the cloak of darkness, the team assembled quietly outside the entrance to the labyrinthine tunnels beneath Millbrook. The night air was thick and still, punctuated only by the low murmur of whispered commands and the soft click of tactical gear being secured. Navy SEAL Commander Jake Lawson moved with practiced precision, leading the assembled SEAL unit and sheriff's deputies into the yawning mouth of the underground passage. His flashlight cut a narrow beam through the oppressive darkness, revealing damp, slick walls that seemed to close in with every step. The claustrophobic tunnels twisted and turned like a serpent's coils, each corner fraught with uncertainty. Every sound, dripping water, distant echoes, was amplified in the confined space, raising the tension among the team. Sweat dampened Jake's brow beneath his helmet, but his focus never wavered. This was their domain now, and failure was not an option. Sheriff Linda Marks followed close behind, her local knowledge invaluable as she guided the group past obscured markings and hidden alcoves. The deputies moved in tandem, weapons drawn, eyes sharp for any sign of movement. It was a silent ballet of caution and determination, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on each shoulder. Suddenly, a faint glimmer of light flickered ahead, an unauthorized source in the depths below. Jake signaled the team to halt, his hand raised in a strict command. They melted into shadows, blending with the darkness as they prepared for what lay ahead. From the shadows emerged figures, armed men with cold eyes and sinister intent. The criminals had laid traps, snares, and alarms throughout the tunnels, desperate to protect their secrets. Gunfire erupted, sharp and echoing violently through the narrow passages. The team responded instantly, their training evident in every maneuver and counterattack. Jake pushed forward, engaging with tactical precision, neutralizing threats with swift, controlled force. His voice crackled over the radio, coordinating movements and calling out enemy positions. The battle was fierce, each corridor a battleground where every inch gained was hard fought. Amid the chaos, Linda directed deputies to secure the perimeter and assist in locating captives. Her calm in the storm steadied the team, her intimate familiarity with the tunnels a crucial advantage. They navigated the maze with urgency, guided by muffled cries and faint calls for help. Suddenly, Jake encountered the embodiment of the darkness they sought to dismantle. The respected businessman, once a pillar of the community, stood defiantly, flanked by armed guards. His eyes gleamed with twisted satisfaction as he confronted them. "You think you can stop this?" he sneered, voice dripping with venom. "You're too late." Jake's response was steady, resolute. "We're here to end the pain you've caused." A brief but intense confrontation ensued. Jake's team moved with synchronized efficiency, overcoming the guards and subduing the businessman. Handcuffs clicked shut, the sound echoing like a verdict through the tunnels. With the primary threat contained, the team shifted focus to rescuing those still trapped in the darkness. Victims were found huddled in hidden alcoves, their faces pale but shining with gratitude and relief. Jake and Linda worked side by side, offering reassurances and guiding survivors to safety. The tunnels, once a symbol of fear and entrapment, began to reverberate with the first whispers of hope. The victims' fragile steps toward freedom marked the turning tide of a long, painful battle. Outside, the night air was crisp and biting as the team emerged, carrying the rescued into the waiting arms of medical personnel and law enforcement. The warehouse above stood silent, its grim purpose dismantled. As dawn approached, Jake and Linda shared a quiet moment, the exhaustion of battle etched on their faces but overshadowed by the weight of their success. "This is just the beginning," Linda said softly, her eyes scanning the horizon. "But tonight, we've taken back our town." Jake nodded, the first light of morning casting a hopeful glow over Millbrook. "We'll keep fighting. Together." Gunfire echoed through the narrow tunnels beneath Millbrook, a cacophony of desperation and defiance that reverberated off damp stone walls. Amid the chaos, Navy SEAL Commander Jake Lawson moved with lethal precision, his every step calculated to protect the innocent and dismantle the network of evil that had held the town in its grip. The dim light from his helmet's flashlight barely pierced the suffocating darkness, but his focus remained unshaken. Ahead, a group of captives huddled in a cramped alcove, their faces pale and eyes wide with terror. The woman Jake had first rescued was among them, her delicate form trembling but alive. Relief flickered in her gaze as she recognized him, a silent acknowledgement of trust forged in the fire of shared ordeal. "Stay close," Jake whispered, signaling his team to form a protective perimeter. The sound of footsteps and muffled voices drew nearer. Reinforcements for the criminals, desperate to maintain control. Sheriff Linda Marks led a contingent of deputies securing the rear, their presence a lifeline for the victims and a bulwark against the encroaching danger. Her steady voice calmed the frightened survivors as they prepared for the perilous journey out of the labyrinth. Suddenly, the tunnel ahead exploded into chaos as armed assailants emerged, firing wildly in a last-ditch effort to halt the rescue. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, and the air filled with acrid smoke. Jake and his team responded instantly, their training evident in every move as they returned fire, carefully shielding the captives. Amid the firefight, Jake caught sight of the businessman who had orchestrated the horrors beneath Millbrook. His face twisted with rage and disbelief as he realized his empire was crumbling. The man lunged toward Jake, a desperate attempt to escape or strike back. But Jake was faster. With a swift maneuver, he subdued the man, securing handcuffs around his wrists. The remaining criminals faltered, their resolve broken by the loss of their leader and the determined assault. Deputies moved in to apprehend them, restoring order to the underground maze. With the immediate threat neutralized, Jake turned his attention back to the captives. He guided them carefully through the winding tunnels, his presence a beacon of safety amid the shadows. The woman from the basement leaned into his side, her strength renewed by the promise of freedom. Outside, the first light of dawn broke over Millbrook, casting a fragile glow on the weary faces emerging from the depths. Families waited anxiously, their hopes tethered to the rescue effort. Tears flowed freely as victims reunited with loved ones, the weight of trauma mingling with relief and the tentative spark of healing. Sheriff Marks addressed the gathered crowd, her voice steady despite the raw emotion in the air. "Today, we have taken a stand against darkness. The businessman's arrest marks a turning point, but our work is not over. We will continue to protect our community." Jake watched the reunions with a mixture of pride and solemnity. The battle had been fierce, but the true challenge lay ahead, helping these survivors reclaim their lives. As the town absorbed the shockwaves of the operation, whispers of hope began to stir. Millbrook's streets, once shadowed by fear, now carried the promise of renewal. Jake and Linda stood together amidst the crowd, their partnership solidified by the trials they had faced. "This isn't just about justice," Linda said quietly. "It's about giving people back their lives." Jake nodded, the weight of responsibility balanced by a quiet optimism. "We've opened a door. Now it's time to walk through it." The sun climbed higher, illuminating a town scarred but resilient, ready to heal and rebuild from the darkness that had once threatened to consume it. The town hall was filled to capacity, the air thick with a mix of apprehension and cautious hope as Millbrook's residents gathered under the tired fluorescent lights. Faces once alight with suspicion now bore the marks of shared trauma. Lines of worry etched deeply, eyes heavy with sleepless nights. The chamber buzzed with whispered conversations. the murmur of voices weaving a tapestry of fear, anger, and the fragile beginnings of healing. Sheriff Linda Marks stood at the podium, her silhouette steady against the backdrop of the town's seal. The weight of leadership pressed heavily upon her shoulders, but her voice was clear, resolute, cutting through the restless crowd. "We've faced darkness together," she began, "and though the shadows linger, our community's strength shines brighter." Jake Lawson sat near the front, his military bearing softened by the exhaustion etched into his features. The events of recent weeks had transformed this quiet town into a battlefield. But today was about reckoning and rebuilding. He listened as residents voiced their fears, questions about safety, trust, and how to move forward from the scars left behind. One elderly man spoke, his voice trembling but firm. "How do we protect our children now? How do we know this won't happen again?" Linda met his gaze with empathy. "We're implementing new measures. Community watch programs, increased patrols, and support services for survivors. Trust will take time, but we're committed to earning it." The young mother rose next, clutching her child. "My family was scared for weeks, but seeing the courage of everyone involved gives me hope. What can we do to help?" Jake stood, stepping forward to address the gathering. "Awareness and vigilance are key. It's important we watch out for one another and speak up if something feels wrong. Together, we build a safer future." The dialogue unfolded, voices rising and falling like the tide, sometimes raw with emotion, sometimes steady with resolve. The town grappled openly with its wounds, refusing to let fear dictate their future. The scars were real, but so was the community's determination to heal. After the meeting, Jake found himself alone on the steps outside the town hall, the cool evening air brushing against his skin. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving a canvas of stars overhead. He thought about the cost. The lives altered forever, the innocence stripped away. And the road ahead. Linda joined him quietly, her presence a balm to the heaviness in his chest. "You did good today," she said softly. Jake shook his head, eyes fixed on the distant lights of Millbrook. "We did good. But this isn't over. Evil hides in shadows, and we have to keep searching." She nodded, a fierce spark igniting in her eyes. "Then we'll keep fighting. Together." Inside the town, the fabric of daily life began to mend. Schools reopened with renewed security measures, neighbors organized watch groups, and local businesses rallied to support survivors and their families. The community's resilience was tested but unbroken. Jake took time to reflect on the hidden evils that had thrived beneath Millbrook's peaceful surface. The battle had exposed corruption, fear, and silence, the true enemies that allowed darkness to flourish. He vowed to remain vigilant, understanding that the fight against such threats was ongoing. As dawn broke over the town the next morning, Millbrook stirred with cautious optimism. The scars remained, visible yet healing, a testament to the community's strength and resolve. The town hall meeting had not erased the past, but it had opened a path forward, a collective commitment to rebuild trust and safety. Jake and Linda walked through the quiet streets, their footsteps echoing a promise. The war was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever came next. In the heart of Millbrook, beneath the scars, a new chapter was beginning, one written with courage, unity, and an unyielding will to protect the innocent. The morning sun filtered gently through the curtains of a modest therapy room at Millbrook Community Center, casting a warm glow over the space where the woman Jake Lawson had rescued sat quietly. Her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes distant, yet slowly beginning to focus on the present rather than the shadows of her past. Weeks of therapy had begun to chip away at the silence that once enveloped her, revealing glimpses of strength and the first tentative steps toward reclaiming her life. Jake sat nearby, his presence steady and patient. Though accustomed to the structured rigor of military operations, he found himself navigating a different kind of battlefield, one of healing and trust. He listened as the woman spoke softly about her fears, her hopes, and the daunting path ahead. Each word was a victory, each tear a release. Outside, Millbrook was stirring to life. The town's streets, once shadowed by fear, now echoed with the sounds of renewal. Children walked to school with cautious smiles, neighbors greeted one another with renewed warmth, and local businesses displayed signs of solidarity and support. The wounds inflicted by the criminal network were still fresh, but the community's resolve to heal was palpable. Jake found himself drawn deeper into the fabric of the town. The military missions and tactical planning that had defined his life gave way to moments of quiet reflection and connection. He volunteered at the community center, helped organize neighborhood watches, and attended town meetings where residents shared stories of resilience and hope. One afternoon, as he walked through the newly revitalized town park, Jake paused to watch a group of children playing beneath the bright blue sky. The laughter ringing out was a balm to his soul, a reminder of what they had fought to protect. The park, once neglected and overgrown, had become a symbol of Millbrook's rebirth, a place where scars could begin to fade. Sheriff Linda Marks approached, her expression softened by the afternoon light. "You're thinking about the kids, aren't you?" Jake smiled faintly. "Yeah, it's what keeps me going." Linda nodded, her gaze following the children. "This town needed someone like you, not just a soldier, but a part of the community." The two shared a moment of quiet understanding, the bond forged through struggle and shared purpose. Jake's thoughts drifted to the future, both uncertain and full of possibility. Though the criminal network had been dismantled, Jake knew vigilance remained essential. The threads of corruption and fear did not unravel overnight. Quiet watchfulness and community solidarity were the new front lines in the fight against darkness. In the weeks that followed, Jake found himself torn between the world he had left behind and the one he was building here. Offers to return to active duty came and went, but the call of Millbrook, the chance to make a tangible difference beyond the battlefield, grew louder. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake stood on the porch of his modest home, the cool breeze carrying the scents of pine and earth. The woman he had helped sat beside him, her smile tentative but genuine. They spoke softly about dreams once lost and the possibilities that lay ahead. "Maybe this town is where I'm meant to be," Jake admitted. She nodded, eyes bright with hope. "You saved more than just me." As stars began to twinkle overhead, the town of Millbrook settled into a peaceful night, its heart beating stronger with every breath of renewal. The battle scars remained, but so did the courage to face whatever challenges the future might hold. Jake and Linda's partnership continued to deepen, a foundation of trust and shared commitment. Together, they stood vigilant, guardians of a community reborn. In this quiet corner of the world, amidst healing and hope, a new chapter was being written. One of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of a town determined to reclaim its light. The town hall's meeting room was alive with a hushed intensity as Navy SEAL Commander Jake Lawson stood before the gathered residents of Millbrook. The familiar faces, some marked by hardship, others by hope, looked toward him with a mixture of curiosity and trust. The air was thick with anticipation, the weight of recent events still palpable. Yet beneath it all lay a collective determination to confront the shadows that had once threatened their community. Jake's voice carried steadily across the room, amplified by the modest microphone set before him. "We live in a world where danger can hide behind the most ordinary facades," he began, eyes sweeping the crowd. "Millbrook has seen that truth firsthand. But what we've also seen is the strength that comes from unity, vigilance, and courage." He paused, letting the words settle before continuing. "The darkness that gripped our town was real. It threatened to tear apart the fabric of our community. But it was met with resilience, by citizens who refused to look away, by law enforcement who risked everything, and by survivors whose courage inspires us all." Jake's gaze softened as he spoke directly to those who had endured the unthinkable. "To the survivors, I want you to know that your strength lights the way for others. Your voices matter. Your stories must be heard. And we stand with you." The room responded with a ripple of quiet applause, a testament to the healing power of acknowledgement and solidarity. "As we move forward," Jake continued, "it is imperative that we remain vigilant. Awareness is our first line of defense. We must look out for one another, speak up against injustice, and refuse to let fear silence us." He gestured toward a series of posters on the walls: resources for reporting suspicious activity, contacts for support services, and information about community watch programs. "These tools are here for you. Use them. Together, we create a shield that no darkness can penetrate." Jake's words were not just a call to action, but a solemn promise, a commitment forged in the crucible of Millbrook's trials. As he concluded, the room filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Residents exchanged glances, some nodding, others wiping away tears, all united by a shared resolve. After the meeting, outside under a sky studded with stars, Jake stood quietly with Sheriff Linda Marks. The cool night air carried the scent of pine and earth, grounding them amid the enormity of their journey. "We've come far," Linda said softly, her eyes reflecting the constellations above. Jake nodded. "But the fight isn't over. Evil adapts, hides in new places. Our vigilance must never waver." Linda smiled, a fierce spark lighting her gaze. "And we won't let it. Millbrook is ready." Together, they looked out over the town, a tapestry of lights twinkling in the distance, each a beacon of hope and resilience. In the days that followed, Millbrook embraced its new chapter. Community groups formed, schools held awareness programs, and neighbors rekindled bonds of trust and protection. The story of courage and survival became a shared narrative, inspiring vigilance and unity. Jake's address echoed beyond the town hall, a reminder that strength lies not just in those who fight, but in every voice raised against injustice. The people of Millbrook had faced darkness and emerged stronger, their collective courage a testament to the unbreakable human spirit. As the quiet night deepened, a solemn dedication was unveiled at the town's Memorial Park, a tribute to survivors and those who had fought tirelessly to protect the innocent. Flowers were laid, candles lit, and moments of silence observed, honoring the past while lighting the path forward. Jake and Linda stood side by side, guardians not only of their community, but of hope itself. Their shared journey underscored a truth as old as time, that courage, loyalty, and unity can overcome even the darkest of shadows. In Millbrook, beneath the stars and the watchful eyes of those who remember, the promise of vigilance and solidarity burned bright, a beacon for all who believe in the power of hope and the strength found in standing together.